French cleats, are they the modern woodworker's organizational dream, or are they the dust-catching, cumbersome trend popularized by woodworking influencers? Or are you like me and have stuff everywhere in your shop and it's beginning to piss you off? A French cleat wall consists of a series of slats like this, with a 45-degree angle cut on the top edge, and these are then mounted on your walls. You can then take a tool you want to have close at hand, make a holder for it, and hang it up on the wall with a cleat with an opposing 45-degree angle. This style of open storage has become very popular because it allows you to change and adapt your open tool storage as your woodworking grows and evolves. I'm in desperate need of some more storage since moving because I have boxes and bags of hand tools everywhere. These all used to be on the recessed shelf behind me in my old shop and now do not have a home. And by building a French cleat wall, it seems like I'll become the sheep I was born to be and fulfill my destiny as a woodworking YouTuber, instead of coming up with a more unique plan. I guess I am not the woodworking hipster I thought I was. Yeah, this is my new tool storage. You've probably never heard of it. I bought cedar fence pickets, which I thought would look cool, but are also 5/8 of an inch thick. And I'll tell you why that's important in a moment. But for now, it's time to rip a 45-degree angle down the entire length so we can make 2 cleats out of 1 board. To make this as foolproof as possible, I've installed 2 feather boards. One that keeps the stock pushed up against the fence just ahead of the blade so it's not pushing into the blade, and I've got one pointing down, keeping the stock pressed down to the table. Any deviation left or right or up and down can cause the cut to go all cattywampus. I've stated on the record that I prefer to keep things in drawers to keep the dust away, and they're also a great way to efficiently use the volume underneath a cabinet for storage. But my tune has changed slightly. For the tools that you use constantly, it's much better to have them close at hand so you're not constantly opening and closing the same drawer for the same square you use to measure everything. If you find your tools on the wall are gathering dust from not being used, I think they're better stored in a drawer or cabinet. Otherwise, you can use a French cleat wall to show off your most expensive tools that you don't use. Limiting how many tools you keep out on open wall storage will allow you to make a smaller French cleat wall. I only have room for about a 4-foot by 3-foot section right here, but I'm fairly confident I can fit all that I need on it. I'm gonna do an even smaller one over by my table saw for a few accessories for that, and I have room down the wall down here if I need a bit more space. Having smaller sections of French cleat walls will make it easier to transport if you have to move, and knowing myself, this is certainly not my last shop, as I tend to be fairly nomadic. Can't you just ditch the cleats and screw stuff directly to a piece of plywood or even directly to your wall? Sure, I did that at my old shop and it's totally fine. I think people justify French cleats because you can regularly move around and reorganize your tools on the wall. But more often than not, you folks have told me that you tend to not move them after you get them where you want it, unless you're making room for a new tool or getting rid of old ones. But even then, I still think cleats are justifiable, even if you only move your tools around once in a blue moon. Why can't I just use pegboard? I mean, I could, but pegboard is rather limited to just a few different size hooks and a few other mounts like a screwdriver holder. Plus, it's kinda ugly. With French cleats, the different kinds of tool holders you can make is only limited by your own imagination. There is also Wall Control, which is a brand name that have a proprietary design for panels. And although they do have a much larger selection of tool holders available over something like pegboard, you're still limited to what they offer, and it's harder to make something custom for yourself. Although it is a great way to get a solution up and running fast. One pet peeve that my friends on Instagram let me know about French cleats is that dust can accumulate in the crevice between the cleat and the back, and it can be kind of annoying to clean. Sure, you can blow it out with compressed air, but you want to know what's better than cleaning it? Not cleaning it. Because I think I've come up with a way to prevent dust from settling down there. And all you need are some biscuits, which is good because they're not really useful for anything else. Zing! I'm gonna use number 20 biscuits as spacers behind each cleat so that it floats off the wall just a smidge, so that dust will fall through instead of getting trapped in the crevice. I already cut these biscuits down because they were a little bit too long. I'm going to put a little bit of glue on each. And now with some 1/2" 23 gauge pins, I will keep them locked in place. Pins are there just to hold it till the glue dries. I cut a scrap block, and I'm going to use this to space my first slat from the top. I'm using the exact same spacer for the other end too, so I don't end up with any sort of air between both sides. I'm going to drive a single brad through each end just to temporarily secure it, ensuring to go through that biscuit that we glued in earlier. And now it's just rinse and repeat for the rest of the cleats, but I am double checking each side with a measuring tape to make sure that the cleats aren't getting off kilter due to any cumulative error. All right, now comes the tremendously fun task of sinking a whole bunch of screws to secure these cleats in permanently. And we're gonna need 2 screws for every single one of those biscuits that we glued in. Why am I so extra? I could have just screwed them in from the front. I would have been done hours ago.
I did it upside down. I did it upside down. Yeah. That's great. That's great.
For the most part, as I am making holders for my tools to hang on the cleat wall, I'm trying to keep things simple. If a tool can just hang from a hook or a dowel, then I'm just going to use a hook or a dowel. This will work for small things like these push sticks, as well as big things like a crosscut sled. You can also use 2 dowels to hang things like a spoke shave or a mallet. You get the point. These are the hand planes that I use the most, and I wanted to make a plane till. I just used a scrap piece of plywood that I pocket screwed these 45-degree angles to the side, and then used some leftover cleat stock, trimmed it around the perimeter, and this prevents the planes from meeting their untimely death. As it turns out, making tool holders for a French cleat wall is a great way to use up scraps. So yeah, simple is good, because overcomplicating things just for the sake of overcomplicating things can hinder you from getting to the projects that really matter. But sometimes complicating things can be really fun. I've recently been getting more into 3D printing, and it's not just for toy boats and fantasy figurines. There are endless possibilities for workshop organization. Check out this chisel holder that I designed and printed. I measured each chisel so that the bevel sits into a recess at the bottom, and then the ferrule just clips in right there. Also, the raised numbers on the bottom in white look pretty cool if I do say so myself. There is also a cleat on the back so that it sits perfectly on the French cleat wall. Here is a really cool one that I am proud of. It holds my sharpening stones with a sliding dovetail mechanism that tightens the stones in place with some machine screws right here. The cleat allows it to hang on the wall, but I can also snug it up in my vise for when I want to sharpen a tool. This is exactly the kind of thing that I need so that I have the path of least resistance for sharpening my tools, because I tend to procrastinate that until things are way beyond dull. Wait! I posted about this 3D printed chisel holder on Instagram, and people kind of freaked out about it, and they promptly asked me to start selling them. The problem is that I really don't have a setup to do this, or a print firm or something like that. However, I am asking around to see if I can make it happen, but I'm not going to go through with it unless I know people are genuinely excited about this venture. So if you are interested in this, or maybe another product idea like it, then follow the link in the description and enter your email, and I'll send you an update if this ends up being feasible. And if you want to see more fun stuff like this that I'm working on, check out my Instagram at ScottyDWalsh. I'm always posting stories about what I'm working on, and I get tons of instant feedback so I can make better content and hopefully better products like this in the future. Now back to woodworking Scott. French cleats are great because things can move around, but they're also a nuisance because things can move around. This isn't so much of an issue for larger things like my drill charging station because the weight of it holds it secure. But for smaller things like this simple peg to hang my crosscut sled, they can get knocked off pretty easily when removing the sled. So therefore, there needs to be a good way to lock the holder onto the cleat. Could you just screw the holder right to the cleat? Well, yeah, but that'll kind of defeat the purpose of keeping things from becoming like Swiss cheese. But instead, we can place screws so that they poke out the back of the tool holder just below the cleat. This prevents the holder from lifting up and off the cleat, and it's probably the simplest way, but it doesn't exactly feel the most secure, so we can do better. Taking the same concept, but instead of just using screws beneath the cleat, we can screw a block to the tool holder underneath the cleat. Now, when I try and lift the holder off, the cleat cannot lift up at all, and it feels pretty darn secure. But when I pull out, it still feels a little wiggly, and although it's really not a huge deal, I think I can improve it even better. This will only work if you make your wall with the cleats floating like I did, but this also turned into another reason why the floating cleat is a good idea. I grabbed these same biscuits I used as spacers behind the cleats, and I glued and pinned them to the block that screws behind the tool holder and underneath the cleat. This grabs the cleat from behind, and man, this is a solid fit. But if you already have a regular cleat wall that doesn't float, here's another idea that worked way better than I expected, and it's pretty easy to do, and all you need is a pocket screw jig like one of these. All you need to do is drill a couple pocket holes. They should be about 2.5 inches above the bottom of the cleat. Using 2.5-inch screws, secure the block behind the holder underneath the cleat. Because of the angle of those pocket screws, the block underneath pinches the cleat really well, and it's actually quite a bit sturdier than the other methods I showed you before. The caveat is that you always need to ensure these pocket screws are accessible, so you need to design your tool holder so that you can remove those pocket screws and move around the tool holder when you need to. And that's all that I have to say about French cleats. And I am super stoked that I am not kicking into all my tools anymore and that everything is up on the wall and easy to grab. Bye!